Welcome to Electripreneur Secrets, the Electrician podcast. I'm your host, Clay Newmeyer. As always, here's my esteemed co-host, Joseph, the sales bot, Luke Canny. Joseph, how you doing today?
It's an amazing day. It's an amazing day, and I'm surprisingly happy talking about a topic that we may not be so happy about after talking about it.
Yeah, we were just talking about the irony. I mean, this topic today is about really the youth, the anger, the emotions, how to harness that, where your best all-stars are coming from, how to develop all-stars. I mean, this all ties in our mission, vision, how we're harnessing this exact energy to make a run at developing a better future for electricians. So you're going to want to hang on till the end of this one if you want to learn some of this stuff and start seeing benefits in your company. Because as we know, there's a workforce that has a shortage of people, and we're here to help you with that just as much as we are to help you master your sales, simplify your pricing, and deliver premium level service. So Joseph, please tell us a little bit about how anger served you or really held you back in the past, and begin this little story we're going to get into today and how we can start making use of this stuff.
Man, suddenly the happy smile starts disappearing when I have to put myself back in that mentality. But for everyone listening and anyone who's gotten to interact with me so far, hopefully I don't portray myself as an angry individual. And if that's the case, and if I've successfully not portrayed as angry, then I'm very proud of that. Unfortunately, my life wasn't always this way. And there was a lot in my past that I feel shaped me into the tool that I am at this point. And I say tool, not because I'm downing myself as a person, but my abilities were harnessed with the intentions and the emotions behind them.
Just to be clear, I would never call you a tool.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm allowed to say it about myself, but I can't say it about someone else, right? So the thing is, when I first started off, I mean, anyone who's understood my interview or my past, I was like this 14-year-old kid just getting into trades. I didn't realize I was autistic at the time. Things weren't great. I had no friends. I really didn't connect to all of my family. I couldn't understand people. It was just, there was a lot of issues there. And the thing is, have you ever been a kid, Clay, where you just feel like you can't quite figure it out, or like where you feel like I don't belong, I don't fit in, no one wants me?
100%. Figuratively and literally. I mean, you're talking to a guy who grew up as an only child with a mom who literally neglected him. I felt not wanted all the time. And I remember, and tying to this specifically, like the first major anger outbreak that I've had to deal with in my adulthood, I actually, and I'll say this publicly, I mean, as an 8-year-old, I pulled a bat and threatened to hit my mom with it because I felt I was going to be disciplined unfairly. And only an adult can understand what that really means, because I've never been a bad person. Anyway, not to take away, we'll get back to that stuff too, but absolutely, talk about feeling unfair and unwelcome, alone.
So the thing of it was that most anger stems from sadness. And I was so very immersed in sadness, but the sadness can't last forever. Eventually something's going to shift. Either you're going to dive into the darker or you're going to dive into the lighter. And at the time, I thought the dark was the only way that I could go. I figured, I was like, you know what? If people already don't like me, what does it matter, right? If I already don't have any friends, what does it matter? So when I got angry and I would get frustrated, I would use it like a fuel. I imagined my body was like a fuel tank. And the more rage you could fit into it, the more constant adrenaline I would have, the more constant drive I would have to change my life through force if necessary. Not physical force, but like just force of effort, if that makes sense.
It does.
The problem behind this was this. I thought this path was actually my way out. I really thought, like in my mind, as this 14 to 23-year-old person, I really truly thought that I could control it. I thought to myself, great, I can control this. I can manage my anger. The issue is that no one can. Anger is a tool. It can be used like the best way I've described it is like anger is like holding a fire. It's like holding a match. You can take that match and you can light a candle with it. You could start a fire with it. You could do amazing things with that fire. But when you hold on to it long enough, eventually you're the only one who gets burned, because either you're going to drop that match and you're just going to catch something else. Like if you were angrily and you outburst on someone who didn't deserve it, that fire is going to spread and you're not going to be able to control it once it leaves your lips. Or if you never speak into the universe and you just sit and meditate on your seething rage of how the world has done you wrong, that'll get you where you need to go a little bit, but eventually your adrenaline's not going to be able to support it. And that's when the match burns down and burns your fingers. And now you end up as this person who's just angry and sad and broken. And that's where real depression comes from, to where you said, I've gone into the depths of dark and I still can't get out. So hopefully I didn't take too much of a turn, but I needed to talk about that.
Well, yeah, it's a bit deep, it's a bit dark, but it's an excellent metaphor. And the reason for sharing this is relatability. So, I mean, let's put it in the group. There's no shame here today, guys. If you felt at those lows, if you've understood sort of what we're speaking about here, you ever felt like anger really held you back at points and at points was able to be used as a tool? I mean, let us know. Go ahead, hit us up in the chat. I've had similar experiences and I've had to learn that it can be a tool. Because, I mean, I think, and honestly, you touched on the autism, the neurodivergence. I'm someone who's identified in that area too. And I believe that I have a very hyperactive brain, but I also understand now as an adult that divergent thinking, although it was something that held me back, it was something that made me different. It was something that was like, oh, this is the hyper kid. And there's different forms of that, by the way. I was very like quiet and observant, but overly analyzing freaking everything to this day. Overly observant. I'll be the guy like networking meetings. I know I've heard you say, well, I converse so well, I network so well. I don't like it. Small talk doesn't sit well with me, right? It's not my strength, guys. I do what I can to connect with you at the deepest level possible, honestly, and help you in the best way that I can. So all this adding up is just recognizing your strengths and turning what these perceived weaknesses are and can be into strengths. Right? And here's one thing I want to tie right to the all-star thread right away so we get into the meat and potatoes of this as well, is also that all stars have something in common. Your next apex player has likely a similar trait as you and I. As you, if you're business owners, the likelihood that you've been hard on yourself. Guys, if you've ever been hard on yourself and you're in our Facebook group, please let us know. Give us a hand up. Give us a 1 in the chat if you've ever been hard on yourself, right?
I mean, I feel like that's almost a prerequisite to start business. From what I remember, it was a good quote that started was, a business owner is the kind of person that would be willing to work 60 hours for themselves rather than having to work 40 hours for some asshole.
Yeah.
It's like literally you've got to say to yourself, I don't like you so much that I'd rather work 20 extra hours to make sure you don't get rich.
Totally.
There's got to be something behind that.
So here's the thing. When you're that hard on yourself, you tend to be a fucking dickhead. Excuse my French. I was a dickhead. You shared some stories. I mean, let's go back just a decade running projects still with 100 people underneath me, sometimes 50, sometimes 30, sometimes 20, depending on the project size. But there was always a couple of trends. This happened for years. My little brother worked with me for a while, and the guys out in the field used to tell my brother the problems that were going on to come and tell me because they didn't want to get chewed. They didn't want me to snap at them. And I had no intention of ever making people feel small, but my natural reaction was just very problem focused. If they came in with a problem, then I'd be problem focused too. We need solutions, right? So as hard as I was on myself, I would then be that hard on others too.
And that's a sad thing. And, it's one of those things where I can respect it. But it also sometimes, have any of us been angry towards our children unduly?
Yeah.
I mean, like anger is something that carries with you. It touches your coworkers, it touches your employees, it touches the people under your care, it touches our spouses, it touches our children. When's it going to be enough? Anger is one of those things where it doesn't run out. It's a very interesting thing. You can feel like you can run out of goodwill towards someone, but you'll almost never run out of anger. And that's why it needs to be so managed so effectively and so efficiently. Because literally, wouldn't you want to put a cap on a fire? Or would you want to just let it run wild and say, you know what, I'll leave the candles burning. I'm just going to go to bed. I'll talk to you guys later. Would you be surprised if your house burned down in the morning?
No, you wouldn't be surprised. Not at all. And that's what happens. And we see it all the time. People lose not just their business, their relationships, their jobs, whatever place they're at. It just takes one emotional outburst, right? As Greg said earlier, did some anger management. I've done some of that work myself. I understand that emotions are emotions, and this thing's almost like a gate valve. We do have to let it out in some way, but it is our choice how we're going to do that. I think us as men, a lot of our listeners are men. If you're a woman watching, you probably agree with us. Men have a tendency to actually have a difficult time managing emotions and not making time to talk about it or figure it out, reflect and build on that to make a tool of it.
Well, look at all the heroes or quote unquote heroes that we've had as kids. Look at the men that are portrayed in TV and in stage and in the movies and all different things. They're supposed to be these strong, muscular, stoic, cold as iron kind of people. They don't express themselves. You don't see them crying. I remember I was at a funeral and my father pulled me over because I was crying because someone I loved really passed away. And my father pulled me aside and was like, you know, men don't cry. This isn't what we do. And it's, imagine being told, being a kid and being told that. What does that do for your sake of feeling, how can I express my emotions in the future? You're kind of limited in your options.
You see it in the generation gaps. Actually, this brings us to a really big, wide topic too that we got to be careful with, but everyone's heard this, the millennials, no good. The workforce is no longer good. There's no hard workers anymore. This is actually a cyclical trend that keeps happening, right? I heard this recently, so I'm going to try not to make a mess of it, but soon after the world wars, there's been generations where people considered useless again because they didn't have to fight for everything, because it was given to them. So this is not something new. It's something that keeps happening. But one thing is consistent. When the next challenge comes up, all those people that were discounted still have human instincts, still have the genetic experience in their bloodlines to stand up for a challenge and rise to the occasion. Leaders emerge. Warriors emerge. That makes sense? Do you believe that?
It does. It actually aligns me with a quote that I heard that I think would really be parallel with that, which is hard times create strong men. Strong men create easy times. Easy times create weak men. Weak men create bad times.
Yeah.
So it's along the lines of like, okay, if let's say quote unquote that was true and that all these millennials, and speaking from someone who's 32 years old as well, like I was 22, I had my license at 24. Was I useless? I'm part of the millennial group.
If we went back to your interview, actually you were useless to some people.
I was.
Right. And I have the similar stories. There were people that didn't want us along the way. Electrical people that didn't want us along the way. What does that tell you?
It tells us that, you know what, looking back at it, I can see where I could have improved. You know what? And I think a lot of it comes down to the wisdom from experience. I recognized things at the time of this is happening to me. And I was angry because things were happening to me. But instead of thinking, no, this is happening for you. Because right now, I mean, if you think about it, I'm in my early 30s. I've struggled with alcoholism. I've struggled with suicide attempts. I've struggled with depression. And yet I'm still here. But the reason why I think that's valuable is because I might be able to reach someone who walked a similar path. But if I was squeaky clean, they're going to be like, I'm not listening to that asshole. What does he know?
Yeah.
So I feel like that still is relevant. And even if we weren't wanted, I know we're wanted now.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I agree with you. And I believe that, you know what, actually, I was on a cat skiing trip one time. Cat skiing. Do you know what that is?
Not a clue. Is that cross-country skiing?
Been fortunate, made some good money working electrical and done well. So it's not cross-country. What it is actually you go out into the mountains of untouched avalanche zones and a big snowcat things that like they use to carve up ski hills and build runs, drags you up. You sit in a cab, actually, drives up, takes about 40 minutes to get to the top. And then you get out and they meet you at the bottom, take you up the next spot. So it's one of the best, next to heli skiing, it's like the best skiing or snowboarding experience on the planet. I snowboard. So anyway, we go there and there's a couple of rich dentists in the group. There's about a dozen people. It gets pretty intimate. We're all there for the weekend. And we're playing pool. And the dentist, I said, oh, lucky shot. And he said, no, Clay, we don't believe in luck. And I just kind of paused and I recognized that, okay, there's a wisdom moment coming. And he said, luck is just the point at which skill meets opportunity.
Wow. That is some serious shit right there. Because
and then he got drunk. The guy was a dick.
Oh, but I mean, he might have been. But at the end of the day, do we really have luck? Was it luck that you and I met each other?
No, I don't believe in luck either anymore. Mm-hmm. Since he said that, and since I was already on a journey of growth, embracing that, I recognized the guy was right immediately. And I stopped using that term altogether. Anytime I say luck, I find myself in internal conflict, actually. You ever have any terms like that? And you're like, God, that was a habit. And I'm going to stop that because it no longer applies to my life.
There's so much that I used to do and used to say that I'm so glad that I don't. I can't think of anything specific that I'd be willing to share, but it's one of those statements where it's like, yeah, there's a lot that I'm glad that I don't do anymore.
So let's tie this back to the youth though, because here's the thing. I actually hear this with teachers a lot where I'm headed with this. A lot of people will say, well, they should have taught that in school. They should have taught this business stuff in school. Honestly, back in high school, I thought about business and I thought, business is boring. That's stupid. I never want to do business. Mm-hmm. First time I ever saw electricians working together, they're like monkeys in a barrel. There happened to be 8 of them working in this wall, all doing EMT and lighting in this industrial facility. And I was like, I could never do that. These guys are nerds. Mm-hmm. I was doing concrete, young guy, right? Both of those things ended up being my passions. So there's an ounce of like recognition of open doors and stuff that matches and experience and knowledge, like you said. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to embracing someone who's holding that match, many people might not know this about us. I know for myself, you definitely speak to this. I was holding that match you spoke about, and I held it too long, and it caused me some serious shit. And I'm lucky, using that term, I am lucky to be so fortunate to have just the right amount of people to support me through that, because I got to where I am. And I'm thankful for all the shit that happened to me in my past because of where I am. You can't blame people anymore. You have to thank them no matter what they did for you in your life. Does that make sense?
Oh, we're touching on something heavy here.
I know.
So that's true though. At the end of the day, the best way of letting go of anger, like if we're going to really look down at it and say like, if you're angry about something, this is what I recommend that we do. I remember I touched earlier, I said, things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And I really do believe that. Every bad circumstance that you're in right now, you don't know what it's going to look like to you in the future. So simply saying, I don't know what this is trying to teach me, but I'm grateful for the lesson. It's simply that mentality of, I really don't know where this is going to go. I've been in some really dark places in my life. I've had people pull guns on me at calls. Like, I don't know what happens in some of these situations, but I don't know where it's going to lead me, is what I'm trying to say. If you don't know where it's trying to go, you won't know what it's trying to teach you. You only future you will know what value this was. Can I give an example of that, if you don't mind?
Better, because my mind is getting blown to bits here.
So I remember I was, let's say, right off the top of my head, I was recruited out of IBM right out of college. 2 days after getting my degree, I had a nice job at IBM, 19 years old, right? That sounds like a great career. My foreman was the biggest POS I've ever met in my life. Every single day, this guy was always on me. And I knew it was me. Like, I knew it was because I wasn't social. I had my issues. I knew that. Every single day, this guy would insult me. And the thing is I wanted to stay at IBM because IBM has all these great perks and benefits, but I ended up leaving to join another company. At the time, I was angry. But looking back at it now, there's two major things that helped me. Me leaving IBM actually helped me transition to my next career, which my next one was the stepping stone, the HVAC company that got me involved in the trainer that helped me do all these things. So it was a stepping stone. The other side was I'm actually still friends with some of those guys. And a lot of them have cancer now because the chemicals that we were working with were really serious stuff. And it was not stuff that we were safely containing. And I know as 19 years old, I was not treating these chemicals safely. So the thing is that, you know what? Maybe this person, though he was the biggest piece of shit I've ever met in my life, maybe something beyond myself was divinely intervening with it and saying, no, this isn't where your path is. This is a stepping stone you're going to talk about in the future. And we're going to make it really rough because otherwise you're not going to want to get better.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. There's like definitely an ounce of intuition in there as well. So I want to bring this back to those early years a little bit. I definitely picking up what you're laying down, and I'm glad that it led you to here. Ultimately, how do we go about now changing someone's destination, allowing them to realize, bringing mentorship to these youth, the young people, or those that aren't quite developed yet that are still holding that match? Because this has become a personal mission of mine. As I began to say, like, I believe that there still could have been something that would have sped me up. I believe I still missed a catalyst. There wasn't that person. There wasn't an entrepreneurial electrician around me to help me. And we know there's a shortage in trades. And we know that one of three places your next all-star is coming from is they're not developed yet. They've got the right attitude. They're hard on themselves. They know they want to perform, and they don't have an outlet for that fucking energy right now. So how do we begin to captivate those people? And this is where I think personally, there's a huge missed opportunity. And what we just talked about yesterday with the twin businesses today and tomorrow, what are we feeding tomorrow's business? And shouldn't we have a strategy? Shouldn't we visit trade schools? Shouldn't we visit even the troubled youth in our community and give the odd presentation and let them know that they're not that far off of millions of dollars in potential, a life that they could be proud of, something they can put their energy towards, fucking grind for, and continue to be mad at yourself about shit that really matters, like serving at the highest level?
I think I have an answer to that.
All right.
I wasn't planning on having an answer to it, but I think I have something that might be of value to the rest of the team. So at the end of the day, we ask ourselves, why are we not doing this, right? Let's think of the typical successful business owner. Let's say someone who's walked similar paths to us. Are they often talking about those negative experiences? Or are they instead on social media talking about all the great things that are happening in their life?
Right. How they sold $2 million last year.
Exactly. Right. So imagine you're some kid or you're someone that's trying to find someone that you want to emulate. You're trying to look for your hero. But all your heroes that are successful aren't talking about what got them there. They're talking about what they're doing currently. They're on level 9. Maybe 1 through 5 was just straight up pain. Pain, like emotional, physical, like mental pain that people have to go through to get to those levels. If you can't speak to that, no one will understand you. So the point I'm trying to get here, and I'm sorry if I'm not making it clear.
No, it's good. It's good.
Is the ultimate thought is we need to be sure that we're always speaking our truth, not just to where we're going, but to where we've been. Because you can attract people and say, you know what? I get it. I've been down that path. I've had the gun to my head. I know what you're going through, but you don't have to take that path. And being able to be in a situation where you as an older person, not saying older, but like you as a more experienced person now in life can say, you know what? Maybe that's the path you think is the best for you right now. But have you at least considered that there could potentially be another way? Simply just interjecting that, could you allow yourself to conceive of another direction that you could go? Or do you believe that your life is headed in one path and that's where you're going to go? Fiery motorcycle accident, and that's it.
Yeah. and even understanding the approach of coaching a person at that level. If you ask most people, they have the coach with the profound effect that they don't like. The person that said some real shit that stuck.
Mm-hmm.
The person that wouldn't put up with their bullshit and just held solid ground and said, that won't work here. But I tell you what will.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Everyone's got those mentors, that person, that coach, it seems. At least everyone in our network of electricpreneurs and people that are aspiring to do more for themselves. You have an example of that in mind?
It did. Do you recognize that I had something in my head? You know me well enough at this point. I actually, during my early 20s, before I went to therapy, before I recognized I was autistic, anything like that, I knew I wanted to be different, right? Like I knew I wanted to change. I just didn't know the way how. So I did every training you can think of, like all these personal development courses, like anything. I was reading books. It wasn't working for me, but I was still trying. There was a coach that I remember working with, and he partnered us up into different teams. And I was supposed to have one person that, like almost like a study buddy in a way.
Right.
My study buddy was always coming late. So he looked at me and he was like, so Joe, is this person under your accountability? I was like, yeah. And he's like, okay, well, are you going to make sure she comes tomorrow? I was like, yeah, she'll come tomorrow. He's like, all right, well, would you bet $1,000 that she's going to come? I was like, absolutely not. You see, that's how much your word is worth. And suddenly it was like, oh,
click.
You're right. I was like, I wouldn't bet $5. I wouldn't pay $1,000 for her soul, let alone actually getting her into class.
Yeah.
So the fact was is that some people are going to say things to you. I remember being mad at him the whole time because he called me out in front of the whole team. But I will never forget that lesson, which is if you're going to say something, how much is your word actually worth? Could you put a dollar amount that you're willing to say, I believe to this extent that what I'm going to say is true?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's valid. It brings another story to mind for me as well, but I got to be cognizant of time here as we're approaching the end of the hour and getting to be one of our longer episodes. I want to make sure that there's some solid value to take from this.
Jeez. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Guys,
make sure we keep it reeled in.
I want to really bridge this back and again, say this very clearly. At this point, if you're with us, you're looking for this action item. You're looking for that all-star action item that's going to make a difference. Again, reiterating what we've been saying this week, you're living for two businesses, today and tomorrow's. It's that instant gratification that everyone is chasing. All your competitors are living in today. You can have the advantage by going for tomorrow. You can develop relationships with people who aren't quite there yet. You can have impact, and following the Pareto principle, it doesn't have to be one-to-one extreme time usage. When you speak to a group, you can move individuals and see that 20% arise, or even applying the 95-5, you can see that 5% come back to you, right? You can begin to have this impact, influence people based on, like Joseph said, not just the good times and where you are, but the journey from where you've been. It's bringing those experienced, those relatably experienced people back into your circle with the vision that you have is going to be really powerful. And I would guarantee you will find apex players in that group in one of three places that we look for them: in the undeveloped, hire for attitude, train for skill category. Massive opportunity. So that's my action for today. Put that plan together and start speaking to the ones that are undeveloped. You have an all-star action in mind? All right, let's do it.
So the all-star action, I would say, can be one of two ways. The all-star action is, one, can you take care of yourself? But two, can you recognize in others that they need the support? Because you as a business owner or you as an employee, it doesn't matter where you stand in your company, but you will have to interact with others. The first step for the all-star action is to remember the moment words leave my lips, they're not mine anymore. I don't own them. I could say something negative to someone and they could carry that with them forever. Really, at the end of the day, the impacts that you're going to be giving people is massive. So the question that I'm going to leave you all with for an all-star action is this. When you talk to someone, if that was the last time you were going to talk to them in your life, what would be the last thing you ever want to say to them? Would it be something negative? Is that what you want to be remembered as? Every interaction, you don't know if you leave a customer, that guy could get hit by a bus on the way out. You could have an employee that dropped a tool on the windshield and now they cracked your windshield. But you don't know. It could be like me and was contemplating suicide when he gets home. We don't know, but we do know that our words we can control. You can think them. Your thoughts become words. Your words become actions, and actions become habits. Control what you think, and then as a result, you'll control what you say. When you can control what you say, that's half the battle right there.
It's massive, massive. I want to leave you guys with just a closing thought on this one. Deep subject, really important. In this time more than ever, how you treat your staff is how you treat your clients, and vice versa. And knowing that your next Apex players, your next All-Stars, and your next best clients, lifetime clients, are in that second to third degree network. You just haven't connected it yet. That means there's power in every engagement. So following Joseph's advice, following what we talked about today, make best use of that, guys. Be intentional with this stuff and grow tomorrow's business. I'm Clay Newmeyer. This is Joseph Lucani, and this has been another Electripreneur Secrets. Find us here every day, 5 days a week, giving actionable advice to help you guys succeed, and get with us live and engaged in the Facebook community. Can't wait to see you again next time.